Take a look at this. A person places their fingers into a cup of water, and suddenly the area around their fingers instantly freezes. Then, they insert a small wooden stick into the water, and as the camera zooms in, you can see ice flowers blooming at the top of the stick. The process of freezing is incredibly beautiful, making one wonder, what exactly is this phenomenon? In fact, this phenomenon has a special name, and it's called hot ice. Although this experiment seems extraordinarily magical, the production process is quite simple. First, pour baking soda into a container, then add a certain amount of white vinegar. Wait until they solidify into a solid, then add a small amount of water. Heat this mixture, and you will obtain a chemical substance known as a sodium acetate supersaturated solution. When you place your fingers into it, the magical phenomenon occurs. Ice crystals slowly spread from your fingertips, eventually covering the entire cup. The principle behind it is also quite simple. The liquid in the cup is in a metastable state, and any external stimulus disrupts its balance, leading to rapid ice formation. If you put a leaf into it, you'll see cotton-like ice blocks forming around the leaf. However, it's worth noting that many people may be confused by this ice-like phenomenon. It's not actual freezing, but rather a crystallization phenomenon resulting from the loss of its metastable state, giving the appearance of freezing. Are there any other fascinating experiments you'd like to know about? Pay close attention to this. On top of a cooling tower 100 meters off the ground, there's actually an excavator hanging and working. It's seen methodically dismantling parts. One might wonder, aren't excavators meant to work on land? How did it get so high up there? In reality, this is a nuclear power plant in Germany. Due to specific reasons, it had to be taken down. However, dismantling a nuclear power station isn't as straightforward as tearing down a building. Given its unique nature, using explosives isn't an option. Therefore, they had to opt for a more conservative method of removal, and an excavator was the first choice. However, the entire thickness of the power station's tower is only 16 centimeters. This required the excavator to operate in a riding position atop the tower. Before starting the work, a series of preparations had to be made. Firstly, a long ladder was built around the tower, designed to lift the excavator to the top. While this step wasn't too challenging for them, the subsequent concern was how to let the excavator work on such thin concrete. After multiple tests, the construction team decided to install large rollers under the excavator's tracks, enabling it to move forward. It was also connected to 4 robust hydraulic arms. The original bucket was replaced with large clamps. Following these modifications, the excavator embarked on a nearly year-long dismantling task. One can't help but wonder if the people working up there were terrified.
Here are 4 interesting and unknown facts that you don't know about. Number 1. There is a fruit called challah, which looks like an exploding planet but tastes like sugarcane. Number 2. The Eiffel Tower gets taller in summer because when the iron heats up, the tower can be up to 6 inches taller due to thermal expansion. Number 3. Lake Hillier in Australia is bright pink in color. This unique color of the lake is caused by algae, halobacteria, and other microbes. Number 4. The Masula village in Iran is a special village as it has streets that are above the houses.
This is the hardest training in the world. The Shaolin monk are the ultimate superhuman on Earth. Their training starts with an early age of 4. Since childhood, they are about to train so hard that they can withstand any physical and mental pain. Their training consists of walking on water, breaking bricks with bare hands, finger punching, iron head, monk pillar skill, standing on iron. With all these training, they become fast, flexible, strong, and unbeatable. After every 3 years, they have to give physical and mental test. Majority of them fails, and only few become a Shaolin monk.
Have you ever wondered why dead passengers were not found on the Titanic? I mean, where are the skeletons of dead people? You see, when the Titanic sank and people died of freezing, they fell to the bottom of the Atlantic Ocean. Sea animals quickly found their bodies and removed their flesh. Human bones dissolve rapidly in solution at the depth of the ocean. Since the deep ocean is highly saturated with calcium carbonate, it dissolves all the bones just within 5 years, which means that all the bodies of the dead passengers were decomposed within 1918, and only their shoes are left. So,
whoever invented the induction cooker was a genius. Do you know how the induction cooker sears this piece of steak? The principle is quite simple. When an electric current flows through a wire, it generates a magnetic field. If you wind this wire into a coil, each turn will produce its own magnetic field. This greatly enhances the magnetic field's strength, and the secret to the induction cooker's heating lies in this coil. When a high-frequency electric current passes through the coil, it creates a high-frequency alternating electromagnetic field around it. This electromagnetic field changes rapidly, reaching up to 100,000 times per second. For example, changing the polarity of a battery can also change the magnetic field, but you would need to do this 100,000 times per second. After completing these steps, you place an iron pot on top. At this point, the electrons inside the iron pot quickly rearrange themselves in response to the rapidly changing electromagnetic field. This process creates eddy currents, which cause intense friction at the bottom of the iron pot, converting electromagnetic energy into heat. This is how the large steak on the iron pot gets cooked. So, do you know why food doesn't react when placed directly on the induction cooker? It's because the induction cooker uses electromagnetic induction to heat, so non-magnetic materials like glass cannot generate eddy currents. Therefore, they cannot be used effectively like iron pots. The best way to test this is to try sticking a magnet to it.
The man who invented the wooden-handled grenade was a genius. 400,000 Japanese troops died because of it during the Sino-Japanese War. Its structure is extremely simple. The top is a metal shell, filled with TNT. Inside the wooden handle is a pull cord and a fuse, which is connected to a detonator, which is responsible for detonating the explosive. As long as you unscrew the cap at the end and yank on the drawstring, the friction of the gunpowder will ignite the fuse, and about 4 or 5 seconds later the detonator will also be ignited, ultimately detonating the explosives. The metal casing is instantly blown into many pieces, which is incredibly powerful. In addition, the wooden handle of this design can provide a greater torque, so that the grenade rotates faster, and naturally can be thrown farther, and also reduces the probability of the grenade tumbling when it hits the ground. It is also possible to tie multiple grenades together and turn them into cluster grenades, which can greatly increase their power. The Soviet Union later even improved the anti-tank grenade, the internal TNT explosive surprisingly more than 600 grams. When the outer safety pin is pulled out, the grenade must be thrown immediately, and with great force. The safety cover would then come off, and the extended cloth tail spring would pull the cloth tail out, which served to stabilize the flight. The safety pin will fall off automatically when the cloth tail is unfolded. At this time, the detonator is released from its fixation, and once it hits the target, the inertia will make the detonator press the striking pin spring to hit the striking pin, thus detonating the explosives, and the power can be said to be destructive and easily penetrate the light tanks.
Most people think the peace sign is just an upside-down Y, but there's actually a true hidden meaning behind the way it looks. You see, the peace sign was conceived for the British nuclear disarmament movement, but because this was a little too much for a logo, they decided to use the semaphore signals for N and D, which represent nuclear disarmament. You know how you have to take out your laptop in airport security? I mean, everything else can stay in your bag, but your laptop or any device bigger than a phone has to be removed. Why is this? Well, it's because these larger devices have complicated components that are difficult for X-rays to see through. And this creates blind spots where people could theoretically hide weapons that go undetected. Most people think the peace sign is just an upside-down Y, but there's actually a true hidden meaning behind the way it looks. You see, the peace sign was conceived for the British nuclear disarmament movement, but because this was a little too much for a logo, they decided to use the semaphore signals for N and D, which represent nuclear disarmament. Have you ever wondered why most barns are painted red? Well, there's actually a pretty solid explanation for this. You see, back in the day, there weren't any Home Depots where farmers could go buy paint and sealers. So instead, they made their own out of linseed oil and rust, a concoction that turned out to be red. And now this color is tradition.
Whoever invented the mortar was a genius. Don't underestimate this thing. It can give the enemy a hard time on the battlefield. How is it fired and aimed? Now put the shell into the barrel, the bottom of the barrel firing pin directly into the shell primer, thus detonating the firing charge, resulting in a huge pressure directly push the shell out, and ultimately blow the enemy into pieces. The 81mm mortar has a maximum killing range of up to 40 meters. As for the recoil generated by firing, most of it is absorbed by the seat plate. That's why you have to dig a deeper hole before mounting the mortar, and then bury the base plate deeply. These rings on the tail of the shell are actually propellant packages, which effectively increase the range of the shell up to 6 kilometers. And aiming is also a technical job. Here is an example of the marking method. First of all, a far and a near the standard pole inserted in front of the gun, behind the mortar aimed at the far pole, and then the scope will be subdivided to the near pole, and then finally use the scope to aim at the far pole. At this time the mortar is given to the direction of the shot. Hit the gun is particularly accurate. Mortar shells can be set up with a variety of fuse modes. For example, the high-altitude bomb mode, it will explode within 2 meters of the target, while the low-altitude bomb mode will explode within 30 centimeters of the target. There is also the touch bomb mode, which explodes immediately upon contact with the target, and this is the most commonly used mode. Finally, there is the delayed mode, which does not explode immediately when it hits the target, but delays the explosion by half a second, which is most suitable for dealing with enemies in the bunker.